Welcome back. I know you've been seeing a lot of me lately, but it's always good to have you join me. The video you're about to watch is probably going to be a rather disjointed one. Very simply, I embarked on a project last night and had gotten well into it when it dawned on me, I really should make a video about this. Well, I wasn't going to eliminate all my work and start it all over again at that point. So I just started shooting some clips in progress. Disjointed it will be, but I think the process will become pretty clear if you watch all through that. This came to my mind as a result of two other videos from outstanding YouTube creators that I have seen. One from This Does Not Compute, where he took I believe it was a Firelight hard drive, FireWire, and used that to create installation partitions for many versions of macOS. Rutgay Mods, Greg being Greg, took that idea and went it one better. He took an old Firelight and opened it up. When you open it up, you're going to find a 2.5 laptop hard drive in there. So he did that, and he replaced it with an SSD. Now, I thought that was a cool idea. I said, well, maybe I should do something like that myself. That might be handy. Then I looked on eBay and saw the prices for FireWire drives has really gone through the roof. So I suppose if you've got some lying around and you want to experiment, that's fine. However, OWC does make an enclosure, about like this, I've talked about this before, in which you can put either a 2.5 inch hard drive or an SSD and connect it via FireWire. These are FireWire 800 ports, but with the correct adapter cord, you can connect to FireWire 400 enabled computers as well. It's also got, and this I find quite handy, USB 3.1. And there is a spot for a power adapter on there, but as long as you're using just this, it's bus powered. It's just fine. Now, it costs about $50, which seemed a little high to me, but given the price of the period Firelight, so maybe it's not so bad. I did find on Amazon recently some similar enclosures that are only about $20. I have not tried them yet. I'm going to get one and see if that's an option. And if it works well, then you can save some money. But this I know does work, and it works quite well. I have put into this a 128 gigabyte SSD, which I pulled from a 2012 quad-core Mac Mini with Fusion Drive. I think I explained this in one of the clips. I've kind of lost track of what I said and what I didn't. But yeah, it had a Fusion Drive, which was made up of a 1 terabyte hard drive and this 120 gig SSD. The Fusion Drive was not booting up. What I discovered was that while the hard drive component of it had in fact failed, this SSD was working just fine. So I've repurposed that, and I now have a whole bunch of installers. I think probably disjointed though the clips are, you'll get the idea of what's going on from those. So anyway, thank you for joining me, and let's get on with the rest of the show, as it were. I hadn't exactly planned this out very well, but I was doing something that may be of interest, and then figured, well, hey, perhaps I should uh, memorialize this. What you see down here on the floor is one of those nifty little OWC FireWire or USB 3 enclosures. It is connected to my PowerMac Dual G5, and the PowerMac itself right now is restoring from a CD to a partition on that 128 gig SSD that's in there. We are currently doing macOS 9.2, so the installer is going to be on a partition on this FireWire drive, and I should be able to install just from that. I have already done macOS 8.6, 9.0, 9.1 I've skipped over, I will get to. I'm going to add in all of the other, on this 128 gig SSD, I will put every possible PowerPC installer from 8.6 up through 10.5 Leopard. I thought that was pretty cool. Now, I got this idea originally from a video on YouTube I saw from This Does Not Compute. A very cool channel, by the way. You might want to check that out. Greg Rutke of Rutke Mods then did his own version where he broke open a Firelight from the period and put in an SSD and has done the same thing. I'm replicating that now, simply using a modern enclosure, and the cool part is it does have the ability to be accessed via USB 3.1, which is very cool. I don't know for sure that I'm going to add to this video, but here it is anyway. Okay, to give you a little bit more of an idea of the process here, I have mounted the macOS 10 installed CD. That, by the way, is 10.0 Cheetah. There you can see the contents of that disk. And we have here disk utility. So I'm going to select as the source macOS 10 installed CD, drag that to source, and then install macOS 10.0 into the destination and click restore. Okay, yeah, because everything will be deleted on that partition. There's nothing on that partition. I've already formatted it. And now it will just work. Progress meter hasn't gone very far. This takes a little while, so I'll be at this, doing all of these. But once I'm done, I should have every one of these Mac OS's installer files set on this one 128 gig SSD, which should simplify, pushing things in and out. Not to mention the fact that FireWire 400 with an SSD is going to run a lot faster than the optical drives will. At least that's the plan. Well, stay tuned. I'm sure we'll be back with more as we go in this. The Mac OS 10 upgrade CD, that's 10.1 Puma, the only one that I have. All the files are there. So in order to use this, you have to have 10.0 installed. So we're going to follow same procedure. For the the source, select the OS 10 upgrade CD for the destination, macOS 10 update, and we restore. This takes a while, of course, because I'm doing this from original CDs. There are a couple of OSs for which I don't have original CDs. I'll go back and do those from image files later on. But once this is done, hopefully installations will go faster, because the FireWire 400 on most of the early Power Macs happens to go really well. The good thing here, of course, I'm doing this on the G5, that I do have FireWire 800, which makes it go even faster. Okay, well, I'm sure we'll have a little bit more as we go, so stay tuned. All right, the project is now completed. The final one was the Leopard DVD. Disk Utility seems to have done an excellent job. Of course, I have yet to actually try any of these. You see that, excuse me, enormous number of mounted partitions now, all very small, like 3 to 8 gigabyte partitions on 128 gig SSD. Now, there might be the question, well, why do this if you've got all these disks anyway? Two reasons. One, it does make things go faster, because having the installer on a FireWire drive, even if you're restricted to FireWire 400 on an older machine, simply goes an awful lot faster than the optical drive will. And secondly, it's rather like the theory of copying your vinyl discs, if you happen to have any, which I don't, but if you did, to make sure you get digital files of that music. The vinyl discs are cool, and it's all this retro thing, and I understand that, but vinyl discs are not necessarily forever. They degrade as you play them. You say the same thing with CDs. CDs get scratched, they get damaged in other ways. So by doing this, I now have all of these installers archived and ready to simply plug them in and go. One final word, you may note, this is of course the Power Mac dual CPU G5 desktop. I did boot it into Tiger, which I don't often do. I usually have it booted into Leopard all the time. I started out trying to do this in Leopard, but I noticed one thing. This 128 gig SSD that I'm using was actually pulled from a quad-core 2012 Mac Mini, which had a Fusion drive, and the seller indicated that the Fusion drive was dying. By the time it got to me, it was dead. On opening it up, I found, yes, the 128 gig SSD and a 2.5 inch 1 terabyte hard drive. Those had been put together via software to act as a Fusion drive. The hard drive had in fact failed, but the SSD seemed fine. So I'm repurposing that. Now that meant, since it wasn't in an Intel Mac, while it was formatted to Mac Extended Journaled, it had the GUID partition table as an Intel Mac would. The Leopard version of Disk Utility, first of all, didn't seem to offer any way for me to change the partition table. And it does not install OS 9 drivers, since Yeah, that's by Leopard. They had assumed people would be on OS 10 full time. You couldn't even use Classic in Leopard. So I booted into Tiger, which allowed me to change the Apple partition map. That if I were to have done all of this with a GUID partition map, this would all be completely useless. And it also allowed me to put in the OS 9 drivers, which is pretty important, particularly for the classic Mac install versions that I've got. Well, okay, so I've got this done, and I think while this whole video is kind of a last minute, oh yeah, I probably should make a video of this kind of thing. It's a little disjointed. I think I put enough into it to give everyone the idea of how it's done. All right, well, thank you so much for your kind attention to this. I really do appreciate that. Please be good to other people and be especially good to yourselves. Take care.